Hey, 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 we are back. Oh, we already have people hanging out in chat. Thanks so much for coming in. I take a week off, go on a trip. It was a fun time, but who are there things to talk about? Before we get too far into that, the requisites, we got to talk about the tea of the day. We got some tea as usual. This is some Boston Harbor tea. I was just on the East Coast. It seems like it's a weird. That's the name of the brand they call it. It's from Battle Road. It's a neat little place talking about the shot heard around the world, the start of the Revolutionary War. I would think though that Boston Harbor tea would be like, well, I wouldn't think it's in fair shape to be consumed after being dumped in the harbor. It's a weird thought in general. Like that would be the one thing you'd think they'd be like kind of mad at is tea in general. But here we are with some Boston Harbor tea. I'll try it again. I tried it once before I came back, and well, it wasn't such a great tragedy if they had left it in the harbor. I'll put it that way. But hopefully it will be better this time. As I remember, it was just fine. Not particularly terrible. I'm overplaying it just for the jokes, but it was pretty reasonable. And I'm mostly just jawing on because, wow, are there things that we need to go over? I'm gonna skip the really obvious one and come back to it because we're gonna talk about that for a long time. So instead, let's talk about the smaller thing that happened over this last week, which was actually I should have pulled up this article ahead of time. You'd think um, you'd think I would have planned this ahead. I knew what I wanted to talk about. You'd think I would have brought up this article ahead of time. I want to. So there was kind of a story where a busload, or maybe it was a plane load, where there were a group of migrants that were unceremoniously dropped in Sacramento as a publicity stunt due to okay I'm almost I'm almost to the point where I found it. Okay, I believe this is it. Let's swap over to so we can take a look at this together. I believe this is the article that I was thinking. I just want to double check. Oh my, the go away, go away. Just stop all of this stuff. You know what? You know who doesn't do this? You know who? You know what kind of news outlets don't do this? Right wing ones. They don't block off this shit. All right, stupid. All right, fine, fine. You can have your stupid ads. Uh, I actually don't have. I actually don't have ad blocker on this. All right. Well, sadly, I gotta do some shenanigans here, but I'll give you the short version. Oh, give me one moment. I do have to take this call. I'll be back in a minute. Glad to be back. Okay, apologies, friends. That was kind of just a kind of important phone call. But in any case, we're gonna try to get into this. There was another article on the subject that these ads are gonna drive me insane. L.A. Times, what are you doing? I might have to go to another another news outlet. But there was an article in particular I wanted to find, but I'll get back to that. I'll start with the general story for those of you who haven't heard. So this has been well, unfortunately, kind of a trend from Republican lawmakers where they will send either planes or buses or whatever full of migrants to a left-leaning or liberal area to be like, haha, isn't it a problem that it's on your doorstep? Haha, it's this is the political action equivalent of conservative humor where they do a thing that doesn't prove their point or isn't funny, then it don't get the reaction they want and say, haha, isn't it great that they reacted the way I thought they would, even though they didn't. And what's worse is that people's lives are being well, they're being used as pawns in all this, and it's pretty disgusting. But let's talk about it. So, planes full, well, okay, apparently a second plane. So, over the week there were at least two planes carrying migrants. They were landing in California, and Florida is being blamed for this. Likely a DeSantis ploy, but he wasn't the first to do this, if I'm not mistaken. It started elsewhere. He's just following the trend of being an enormous piece of shit. But yeah, so on Monday, and apparently they're from South America, and they were flown on a charter jet to New Mexico. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and we can read this article to see how many of these things come up. But I'll mention them otherwise. All right, documents carried by the migrants appear to show that the weekend flight was arranged through Florida Division of Emergency Management, and it was part of the state's program to relocate migrants, mostly from Texas, to other states. California Attorney General Rob Bonta said. So this is what I mean of like this has been a trend where they're just sending people to other states as a stunt. Well, we'll go on. The contractor for the program is Verital Systems Company, which coordinated similar flights that took dozens of Venezuelan asylum seekers from San Antonio to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts of last year. So you might remember this event happening. As I say, it wasn't DeSantis as the first; it was first from Texas. Uh, on Monday, Bonta's office said the second plane carrying roughly 20 people landed in Sacramento. Special agents from the California Department of Justice are on the ground and have made contact with these individuals. So a lot, and that has been the pretty consistent trend, is that because they land in liberal areas where people aren't just hateful bigots, at least that's not their main political drive. Oftentimes, these migrants are just taken in, and the people do the best they can to accommodate and make sure these people are minimally harmed by what has just been done to them. Oftentimes, this is why people on the right will pretend that the reaction they got is the reaction that they were looking for, because you'll have people be like, oh, look, Martha's Vineyard had them relocated out of Martha's Vineyard. Why didn't they just accept them? Well, because they didn't have the infrastructure to handle people being dumped in there out of nowhere. Had there been more consistent immigration to that area, they should have had the proper infrastructure to handle this sort of thing, as indeed places like Florida and Texas ought to have had themselves. Uh, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' office did not return calls or emails from the time seeking comment. Of course they did. Of course. And they don't. Okay, so this is another thing. Like, why isn't he taking credit for this if he did, or even commenting? Why is he not saying one way or the other? I think it's very clear, actually. So, they say it's unclear what role, if any, the GOP presidential candidate might have had in the flight. I also don't know what role he did have. I will say that it is suspicious because if I mean, think of it. If you hadn't done it, if he hadn't sent these migrants, then he can say, no, this is a ploy that I don't do. I'm about the policies or whatever. You can spin it however you want. And if he did do it, you could just be like, yeah, I did that shit. Except part of the problem now is that this has been happening. Republicans are starting to realize that, well, not everyone agrees that they should be above the law. and a lot of charges have been speculated on in terms of what could be done here. Human trafficking among them, kidnapping, another. There's a lot of like really terrible stuff that the Martha's Vineyard incident had in particular, where these people were like lied to about their asylum claim appointments, and then like shipped to a place where they had 6 hours to get across the country to make their appointment. So now they're guaranteed to be in the country legally due to these actions. It's like a whole lot of stuff that goes into this. And I think the legal liability is a very, I don't know, it hangs over the discussion as to whether people like DeSantis will claim responsibility for these things if they took part in them. Uh, I think that if he did, the reason he would be unwilling to comment is just to like. And remember, he's a presidential candidate. If he didn't do it, just being reached out for comment to get cameras and eyes on him is something he's going to try to do. He wants as many eyes on him as possible. He's trying to run for political office, but he didn't do that. I think because he wants to kind of have it both ways, if he participated, that is, which is to say, if it's viewed favorably, he wants to be able to say, "Oh, look, I did that because I'm a giant piece of shit, and my voter base loves that. That's the thing they like." And then, but he has the legal protection of not being able to be held accountable, or at the very least, he's not on record as saying he did the thing that is breaking the law. Of issue that apparently Trump's lawyers are having, but we will get back to that. So that brings me to the next part of this story, which is that I did see. Uh, you LA Times, please, for the love of God, stop doing this. Okay. Um, apparently there are threats of kidnapping charges. Uh, I'm gonna stop searching this in the LA Times because oh boy, does it suck. But I did see that. Oh, okay. So there's been some updates. So according to the Sacramento Bee, this is ridiculous. They they need. Okay, sure. This is this is so bad. Okay. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis confirmed sending Latin American migrants to Sacramento. So I guess we can nix what I was just talking about. But they confirmed on Tuesday. Oh, okay, that's why, because it was beforehand. Confirmed on Tuesday it was responsible for the two recent flights that brought Latin American migrants to Sacramento, saying that 36 asylum seekers consented to the trips. Now, well, he says this. We'll see. It'll become clear how accurate that is. And in an email to the Sacramento Bee, DeSantis spokeswoman Amelia Johnson wrote that the Florida's voluntary relocation is precisely that, voluntary. Notice he's focusing on the voluntary nature of it, not like whether it's good or not. Uh, the point, of course, is like he's sending. Remember, two planes with 36 people. This is not an attempt at doing something positive. It's a publicity stunt, and the voluntary focusing on the voluntary aspect is because the Martha's Vineyard thing had all those allegations of human trafficking and kidnapping. It was like, no, 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 they agreed to go, maybe, or maybe they signed something that like they were told it was something else. Who knows? Through written verbal and written consent, these volunteers indicated they wanted to go to California. A contractor was present and ensured they made it safely to a third-party NGO. The specific NGO, Catholic Charities, is used and funded by the federal government. Johnson wrote. So, uh, so it seems that he is now taking responsibility for it, and it's absolutely disgusting. Um, but yeah, there's a lot more to the story, and I encourage you to look into this. One of the things that was kind of interesting to me about this is I happen to know someone who works in a political with a political organization. This this is unreal. This is oh, every site has like some no, don't block our ads so we can just leave me be. Okay. This is not gonna work out well. All right, well, never mind. All right, this is what you get. San Francisco Chronicle, LA Times is all your ad bullshit. Nobody wants to see them. They're obnoxious and they get in the way. And the fact that you have them peppered all over your news site means that I'm not going to go to you for news. And instead, I'm going to get it from some other source, which is the opposite of what you want. Stop doing this. This is bad. But I happen to know somebody who was commenting and working on the on the ground to deal with the issue that was dropped into the lap and try to help these people who were just flown across the country for a political stunt. And I was actually thinking about talking to him about maybe coming on, but I think at this point it's not particularly beneficial to him. I don't really have that many people who watch me, but it's the kind of thing I'd like to do in the future. And if y'all would be interested in hearing from someone who does this political work and letting them talk about their their work in this regard and it is exactly that they do and all this stuff, I really would like to interview him on this subject, but it needs to be worth his time as well. So if you would like that kind of thing, please let me know. And also, it means it's in your best interest. You know what? Let's be clear. It's also in your best interest to like, comment, subscribe, get more people to get the word out about this quite amazing channel. Because now it's good for you. It's not just me, also you. It's good for you too. So that's one story. That was where I was like, I had just gotten to the East Coast for my trip, and this story breaks just like, oh wow, just immediately. But wait, there's more. There's the stuff that y'all are already familiar with, which is that former president Donald Trump, has been indicted on some number of counts. I want to find it. There was okay. Here's a full list of charges somewhere. So here is the actual indictment. Can I view this as a pop out? That is the opposite of what I want. Look at all this. Look at all this nonsense. I guess full screen is better than not. All right, has been indicted on a great number of counts. I just want a list of the indictments. The indictments have been unsealed, apparently. All right, so here, according to the court document, here are the charges on which former President Donald Trump has been indicted. 31 counts of willful retention of national defense information, 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct justice, 1 count of withholding a document or record. Oh, this needs to. Okay. 1 count of concealing a document in a federal investigation, 1 count of a scheme to conceal, 1 count of false statements and representations. So all told, what is this? 31, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 37 counts. 37 charges that he's been indicted upon. Now, the first question that you all might be asking is certainly the one I was asking myself, which is, what exactly does an indictment mean? Which, if I could spell, would find it a lot easier. So this is a formal charge or accusation of a serious crime. I want to be clear. Okay. When a person is indicted, this is according to the Department of Justice, when a person is indicted, they are given formal notice that is believed that they committed a crime. So the indictment contains the basic information that informs the person of charges against them. So this means that at the very least the prosecution believes that there is sufficient evidence to charge for these crimes. So that's step one. As I understand it, after this goes to be, and if I remember correctly, for this type of proceeding, in order to indict, there needs to have, this is what we've been doing since his arrest or whatever, is demonstrate that there is sufficient evidence to go to trial. Next, if I'm not mistaken, is the arraignment where the accused will, you know, announce whether they are claiming to be guilty, not guilty, whatever other things get involved in that. ST is okay. It's fine. And then we get to the actual trial portion, though of course there's a lot of pre-trial stuff. I don't know at what point disclosure becomes a thing or depositions and yada yada, etc. So I'm not exactly sure exactly how the process goes. I'm not a lawyer, but this is pretty a big deal. A lot of people are mad about this. Let's start with the most obvious anger that I'm sure everyone could guess is that the right is losing their absolute shit talking about. I think it was Laura Ingraham. Uh, oh shoot, I'm not gonna be able to find this now. I've seen it 300 times this week. Um, uh, I saw it like 300 times this week, and now I'm not gonna be able to find it. Where, if I'm not mistaken, it was Laura Ingraham, but it could be. It might have. It doesn't matter. There was some advice of like, oh, every Republican in solidarity should suspend their political campaigns. There are people losing their absolute minds. So the first question might be, why? Why are they mad? I think part of it is just on the right. There's a lot more of a sense of like our guy is above reproach. He is the God King. This is why people joke about God Emperor Trump or Daddy Trump or whatever. Literally, Milo Yiannopoulos was calling Trump Daddy. Like, I don't know if that was just because like he thought it was like cute and triggering, or well, any number of other things. But this is a thing that comes up, and so there's a lot of anger of just like, how dare they accuse him with crimes? This is a witch hunt, and so that brings us to the next thing: is this a witch hunt? Is Trump being unfairly singled out for these allegations and these charges? And to which my answer to that, honestly, is who cares? For real, who cares? Sure, we'll call it a witch hunt. Let's say it's a witch hunt. They're doing this just because like they don't like him. They think like he should be charged with stuff. Does it matter? The question that should be asked is, did he do it? And if he did, then it doesn't matter what the reasons for seeking these indictments were. What should matter is whether he committed the crime, right? What happened to Law and Order, right? You remember Republicans used to be the Law and Order people? Does everyone remember that? They used to scream about it like they cared. They didn't. It was always bullshit. But now now that uh, now that their guy is being charged, obviously they don't want to talk about that kind of thing. No, it shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a witch hunt. That said, I don't think it is. Uh, these there's a lot of stuff that makes this seem credible that's come out. Trump loves to run his mouth, and oftentimes he'll say things that are incriminating, even if he doesn't intend to. He's not exactly a smart guy. So that's the next thing. Is this a witch hunt? Just does not matter. And if anyone starts going on to you about it, I would honestly just insist on changing the subject. Like if they want to yell that this is a witch hunt, just be like, okay, sure, does it matter? Did he do it? If it's a witch hunt, like again, if assume it's a witch hunt, let's say it is, but if he did it, does it matter? The next thing, of course, people start yelling about is the next is they want to do the whataboutism. But this politician or Biden or Clinton or Hillary or did these things, I've seen people going back to yelling about Hillary's emails. I'd like to remind everyone those people went through those. As far as I understand, it was like not great, but it wasn't like she wasn't breaking the law. It was just just a kind of a gray area at best. But okay, sure. Let's say those things they actually did these things. Biden's the head of a crime family. He's the new mafia boss. Sure, all the things they say is true. Charge them too. and that's where we come back to this idea of like the God Emperor of like our guy is they deify on the right their candidate of choice, and they think that the left does this too. I could not give a shit if Biden got brought up on charges. Actually, that's not true. Sorry, no, that I'm sorry. I do try to be honest with you. I just lied a little bit. I do care a lot as to if Biden gets brought up on charges. I want him to be brought up on charges. If I like honestly, if you asked me, if you make me the guy who gets to decide this for one day, should be a new branch of the FBI whose only job is to investigate politicians in office and afterwards for crimes that exceed not just include but exceed what is normally required of a citizen who doesn't have that kind of power. I mean investigating for crimes like war crimes and uh, failure to represent their constituency, things like that included, on top of all the other normal crime stuff. Honestly, if it were up to me, every president, every congressperson, every governor, every politician who leaves office, as a part of their leaving office, is confronted with law enforcement whose job it was to investigate them throughout their entire campaign and bring up any charge they think is even somewhat warranted and charge them with it. And then from then on, main turn, like, because presidents can do a lot of stuff out of office, as we are clearly able to see. Presidents can do a lot of shit once they leave office, so don't like stop there. But if it were up to me, every president when they leave, they get charged with the crimes they did. Ideally, it should happen before they leave, but it should definitely happen when they leave. So if you want to, like, when people start screaming again, this is another instance of like when they start screaming about Biden or whatever, good, charge him with crimes too, all of them. Anything you think he did, I don't give a shit. If there's evidence, he should be charged because people with power have, well, it's tautological, right? When you have power, you have greater ability to affect the world negatively and positively, and we need to be more watchful and more attentive to the crimes of the powerful than we are to the crimes of the powerless, and we do the opposite in this country and a lot of others. So yeah, I'm real glad that Trump got. Yeah, exactly, like you said, it's about accountability. Um, yeah, I'm all for that accountability. Good, bring them all up on charges. Go back. Fuck it. Why not stop? Why stop there? Why stop with Biden? Go back. Get Obama. Get Bush. Get Bill Clinton. Get them all. Uh, this when you have this kind of power, you should be scrutinized. This is the same reason why people want additional accountability for police. It's just we didn't think it's just one of those like we thought the police thing was politically actionable and the politician thing seemed like a long shot. I love that this is happening. And anytime someone's like, "Oh, but what Biden did," yeah, I'd love for him to get charged with shit too, because we can do a lot better from our politicians and our representatives and the people in power, and this is part of how we get that. So yeah, if someone that's answer to problem number two of right wingers screaming at you incoherently about this thing is the first is the witch hunt. Just be like, who cares? The second is, but all the other crimes, good, charge those too. I love that this is happening for that reason. Let's start charging charging people for the crimes they do when they have more power. That seems great to me, actually. Um, and I think those are the like two main avenues of response. Nobody seems to say he didn't do it. Mostly that like if he did do it, Biden did it worse. Or sometimes they're like, oh, he had the right to declassify these documents. I just want to remind everybody that, well, one, I do not know what I'm talking about. At least not in its totality. So I don't know if he did have the right to declassify these documents. What I do know is that he didn't declassify these documents. Maybe in his head, his brain, he was just like, they're declassified now. But that's not how that works. It's a process, right? You actually have to officially declassify it. And not even according to Trump did he do that. So even if there was the right to declassify these documents, he didn't do it. And then people will say, "Oh, Biden did it worse." Cool, get him too. I don't give a shit. We can do better than Biden, and God, we need to do better than Trump. And in when laws get broke, yeah, if those are laws that protect the people, then we need to be enforcing them, especially the people in power. And so we'll see what comes up in the coming days, weeks, months. If you want to see, here is the court documents. I well, one, don't want to read 49 pages, but two, I would not be able to understand this in any meaningful way. I'm not I am not a lawyer. I have zero law education. So instead, what I'll do is I think I'll put this in the description, and if anyone is a lawyer or does understand these things, well, this is public information. If you're interested to take a look, and um, if you want to explain to my chat and my community what the contents of this stuff is and go over it and talk to me about it, I would absolutely love for that to happen. So please reach out to me, earnestengagement@gmail.com. Pretty easy, and then maybe we can get more information about this. But that is not that is not where this story ends, because of course the next question that a lot of people are asking is, what does this mean for political campaigns? A lot some Where to start with this is a little tricky. I'll start with the actual campaign proper. Will Trump be able to run for office while being charged with these crimes? Let's find out. And I start by asking this question in that way because I think a lot of people want to just answer that question, but don't do any of the looking into it. Um, so let's take a look at this. Oh my. Uh, yeah. So as I understand it, yeah, this is kind of what I thought, but I wanted at least some corroboration from. Well, Axios is a news source, right? I don't. It seems that Trump can still run. As I understand it, Trump could still also win. The difficulty that might come up, the easy one, because I don't know how long this trial will go on. Trials sometimes last a very, very long time. And this is part of why I wanted to start talking about this. I don't know how long the trial will be, or how long it will be before we start actually in the trial process. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Maybe there's even a plea bargain. I have no idea. Time will only tell. But as I understand, he can still run for office while still being charged with these crimes. Some might instinctively have an issue with that. And weirdly enough, I don't. The reason being that the ability for the government to uh, charge someone with a crime in order to prevent their political ambitions, I think, is a very dangerous precedent. Uh, I mean, we can imagine very easily the a situation where someone more likely from the right, since they like their dictators, were in a position of power, someone like Trump or DeSantis, wants to make sure their chief opponent can't run against them, and then just charges them with some bullshit. Just nonsense, just to make sure that they can't run. Additionally, people who have committed crimes aren't necessarily evil down to their core, essentially bad people. There are people who have committed crimes, or more accurately, who have been convicted of committing crimes. Some number of people are in prison having committed no crimes, or at the very least not the ones with which they are charged, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into that: plea bargainings, all the police lying, all this other stuff. even if they did do those things, sometimes the things that they've done aren't necessarily horrendously evil. And I mean this for stuff like if you got charged with having $50 worth of weed on you, I don't think that makes you like a monster. I don't know. I know I'm crazy. It's like on the left, that's such a wild position. And the ability for someone who has been convicted of a crime to run for political office, to seek out change, to try to change the world, I think is still good. I don't like a lot of the worries I think regarding this kind of thing stem from this idea that murderers will like vote to make murder legal, like that's a real thing. I don't think that is. And instead, I would like people who, for example, were imprisoned for having $50 worth of weed on them to be able to run for office to maybe change that if that's something that the people agree needs to be changed, right? This is a democracy in theory. And so if that person is elected into office to do that thing, I think that can be good. Like I don't think it's evil to smoke weed or whatever. I think weed culture is obnoxious, but not evil. Maybe we should maybe that's the line. It can't be legal if the culture surrounding it is obnoxious. Also anime. No, I'm joking. This tea's better than I first gave it credit for, but still, just fine. So, I think it's a good thing that Trump, it seems, can still run even though he's been indicted. I think he's still allowed to run if he's been convicted. Honestly, um, one moment. It's another important phone call. I know we've had a lot of interruptions today. Think of it as taking a break. Giving yourself a chance to relax. Just one moment, please. Sorry about that. I could have sworn that was an important phone call I was expecting, but they hung up the moment I answered. So I don't know. I'm a popular guy. Yeah, I don't know about that. No, there's just some like, um, there's just some stuff like my grandma needed help with some stuff. So like trying to make a call for them and then waiting for them to get back to me after being on hold. It's just like trying to help out, and so I'm doing that. But back to what we were talking about. So that was the next question I had. Is like, can felons? Yeah, I'm not mistaken. Yeah, even if someone is convicted of a crime, even a felony, they can still run for office, and I think that can be good. Sorry, let me turn on the fan. And I think that can be good too, kind of in the same way that we just talked about. I think it's important that the state cannot use its power to prohibit political change, or the people who presently have control over the state. So I think it's good that felons can run, but of course then we have like, okay, well, I'm not sure if these are felony indictments for what it's worth. That doesn't feel that important to me. I believe they are felony indictments, but that doesn't really matter to me. So Trump can still run. So the question is like, what effect does this have on his campaign? There could be a number of things. There's some number of people who are looking at this, just as I mentioned before, just screaming witch hunt, and that he trying to create the the sense of martyrdom that Republicans love so much. As much as they scream about victim cultures, no one cries victim more than the Republican Party. Oh my God! But uh, so it's possible that will help his campaign. It's also possible that just court proceedings are going to get in the way. They take a lot of time. Obviously, his lawyers are going to be doing a lot of it, but any amount of time that Trump has to sit for a deposition or be in court, it's not just that time spent. It's also the time getting there and preparing for it and all this other stuff, and it takes a lot of time. And it's very possible that his campaign will feel its effects. It remains to be seen. Now, of course, as I've mentioned previously, I don't like Trump. and I don't want him to be president, but I do consider him a safer option than someone like DeSantis. So we'll see how much it affects the primaries and what will happen. But another question that's been asked about regarding this is, let's say all the things happen, right? He is convicted, or maybe is still being charged, but also wins the election, becomes the president again. Can he pardon himself? This is the question that we had in the last Trump administration, the presidency, Trump presidency. Because as it turns out, this guy loves doing crimes. It's like his favorite thing. He does them all the time. And so the question is, can he pardon himself? And as I recall, that question went unanswered. Um, well, should be themselves, but can the president pardon himself? So I got a lot of this information from a YouTuber who is a lawyer and has some has an education on this subject, and I would advise seeking people who better understand this. But as I understand, we don't really know because no one's ever tried, and the assumption is that they wouldn't need to. But let's go through this together. So Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution says the president, quote, shall have the power to grant reprieves or pardons or offenses against the United States except in cases of impeachment, end quote. So, as I understand it, let me uh, let's actually find where it says it in the Constitution. Yeah, so as I understand it, that is the totality of what the Constitution says about it. Yeah. Here's from constitution.congress.gov. So should be pretty reliable here. Let's go to the pardon power section. Oh, geez, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, the president shall be commander in chief of the army and the navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states, one called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject related to the duties. Okay, this is not. Oh yeah, and she shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. This portion of a sentence is the only part of the Constitution that has to do with this, and I think it's supposed to be, maybe intended to be expanded upon thereafter, and perhaps to some extent was through additional laws, which again I don't have the background to really determine. But as I understand, it's this would have to be adjudicated when someone tries. So it's really uncertain as to whether he could or not. I think it would be best if the president could not, but that's because I don't like empowering the powerful. I like empowering the powerless. It tends to be that people who like power, read the right wing, would like the ability to pardon themselves because they like to do crimes and think they're above the law. Additionally, because this is so vague, this empowers people like our current Supreme Court, who is filled with people who call themselves originalists. I'll get to that in a moment. To interpret it in, oh my God, a moment, please. This might be the actual important phone call. I'm sorry. Okay, that should be a lot of it. I'm very sorry about that. We should be good to go for the rest of the stream now. So I would think, if I remember correctly, what we're talking about is whether it's a good idea for. Oh yeah, we were talking about originalism in the Supreme Court of the United States. So as my understanding, originalism is this like legal concept of like, oh, what do they originally mean? And what that actually ends up meaning is just like whatever, like whatever right wing shit. People originalists tend to be very right wing, and wouldn't you know it, the original intent is always really right wing. It's wild how that works out. But if you were to look at this one passage that exists, this one part of a sentence, it doesn't say anything about except themselves, right? It just says except for impeachment, which, while in office, is the only thing the president can be that can happen. As I understand, president can only really be impeached. I don't know if they can be brought up on criminal charges. Actually, if I remember right, in the previous Trump administration, that question got raised as well without a clear answer. So it remains unclear, and I am skeptical that the Supreme Court will rule in a way that I think would be good. It might be legally justified, but that's not as important as what is actually good to do. Because a president who can just do crimes, well, I guess the previous president was that guy, but with carte blanche to do crimes and just say fuck it, I'll pardon myself. Like for real, like imagine if a president could pardon themselves. We worry about people legalizing murder, like we don't actually, but people act like felons will just legalize murder. Uh, but that's what a president could do. A president, if given the ability to pardon themselves, literally could just murder whoever they wanted and pardon themselves, right? Presidential pardon is for anything except impeachment. Now that said, maybe maybe the people will say, okay, well, you'll be impeached for the murder or whatever. But I don't think that is sufficient as a means of reining in an abuse of power. And so it's really worrying. I think I hope that this discussion has made clear, at least a little bit, the importance of Trump not getting in office. This is exactly why. Like he likes to do crimes constantly. He wants to be above the law to be able to do all this stuff. And it will use any and he has the backing of a lot of really powerful and shitty people to do it, in part because of the previous actions taken. Why is the Supreme Court weighted the way it is? Well, the because the Senate under McConnell during the Obama administration refused to do their job. All of these things compounded, and now we see why it's so important that not just Trump. It would be worse, honestly, if DeSantis was in power, because then he could use these powers with intention, not merely do it because he's a buffoon, but because he wants to wield this power in this way. And that's the concern. This is why it is a necessary, as we were talking about previously, a necessary thing for Republicans to not win anymore on a political level, because the ramifications are pretty severe. But also why it's not good enough for Democrats to win, because they don't stop this from happening. This is an oddity. This is the only time a former president has been charged with crimes. Do you think other presidents haven't been committing crimes? We've had presidents who've done literal genocides. We've had presidents who, like, what was the Iran Contra thing? Like, there are so many things presidents have done and gotten away with. This is the first time. So I think it's important that we look for accountability in these things. This is why this story matters. Is accountability and preventing the abuse of power. Because at the end of the day, I mean, power gives people power. I mean, it sounds stupid to say, but I think a lot of times people don't look at it that way. People don't seem to realize. They'll act like power is just this thing, but like it doesn't make us any different. Well, no, it does, and it's really important that that our response and our treatment of people with power is proportions to that power. This is why, again, accountability from police departments is something people on the left look for, and why it ends up being that you need massive protests to get one person to do something different. You need maybe millions of people on board to get a change when they don't have power, but when they do, the president can just do some stuff. The president can just start a 20-year war in another continent because yeah, fuck it, why not? And this is the issue. So we are back. I went over the things we wanted to. It's a bit of a shorter stream today. It's in part because I'm working back up into things. I think I'm gonna cut it pretty quickly because again I got to take care of that stuff the same thing that these phone calls were all about. As far as the tea goes, it's all right. Well, I mean, I don't hate having it. It's fine. We'll definitely have more of this Boston Harbor tea in the future. And yeah, please let me know in the chat or comments if you want me to try to reach out to that person I know who is dealing with the migrant planes or the planes full of migrants being sent to Sacramento, and what exactly they were doing in the political organization that he's a part of. I would love to talk to him about it. It's just a matter of whether it's worthwhile for him. So again, it's good for you. It's actually in your best interest. If you want to hear from interesting people like that I have more subscribers. So yeah, please get the word out, like, comment, subscribe, and all that. Actually, on that subject, before I go, I am so very happy. This guy I had mentioned previously as being super mad at my comment section is back, and it is the impotent anger is delicious to me. It sustains me. But I guess that's all I wanted to say about that. It's if you're watching, thank you so much for providing so much joy in my life, for seeing how angry you are and just screeching into the wind. I love it. But thanks so much for watching. I know it's a shorter one. We'll get back into stuff tomorrow. Maybe we'll do a debate review. Maybe we'll do like a bunch of stuff. I was going to do maybe like a PragerU section after this, but as I say, still working back into things, and I got some stuff to take care of. So until next time, I'll catch you. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good one.